All right, we're live again. Check the mic. Live reaction. The New England Patriots are making a ton of moves, including Sam. I'm only half joking here. The biggest move of free agency. I already said I don't have any free agent axioms other than you sign Morgan Moses. It's what you do. You sign the great Morgan Moses in free agency, and the Patriots did it. Only one team can do it. New England did it among a plethora of other moves. So we're going to break it all down. Morgan Moses, a dependable, versatile right tackle. Just a dependable right tackle. Stays healthy for the most part. Solid across the board. That's the one offensive move New England's made, but they made their big splashes more on the defensive side of the ball so far.
Yeah, so you want to spend the first 10, 15 minutes breaking down Morgan Moses, or is this, we're going to talk about other things?
Oh, I was just teeing it up to you, but we could start with Morgan, headed into, let's see, 3, 6, 9, year 12. Year 12 in the NFL. Rarely injured, coming off of one of down season compared to what he's been in previous years. I thought the Jets did a good move. It was a good move to bring him in last year. Didn't exactly work out for the Jets, but a solid run blocker, solid pass protector, and when you're getting solid on the offensive line, particularly a tackle where the Patriots have a massive need, that's a good start to building the offensive line.
And okay, it's a 3-year deal at 34 years old. That's optimistic, shall we say? It is, though. I mean, the tackles have been flying off the board, right? Between guys getting re-signed before they even hit free agency, guys like Ronnie Stanley in Baltimore, and then tackles getting signed like the second free agency hits or tampering hits, theoretically signed anyway, and not necessarily great players, but like the availability is getting pretty slim on the ground. So if you're the Patriots, who, remember, basically need a whole offensive line, or it's certainly multiple tackles, maybe interior upgrades as well. Like, they need to do something significant. So if you're watching all of these guys fly off the board, you're like, grab Morgan Moses. Like, just get it done. Get it done. Anybody, like, put him in, lock it up. Like, it should definitely solidify one of the 5 offensive spots on that offensive line, and they need it.
It's not a panic move. It always should have been the plan. I've only been the Morgan Moses thing. I mean, for me, Sam, I think that the guys like Morgan Moses, and for those of you who listen to the show forever, it used to be Alejandro Villanueva. There are usually 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th year offensive linemen who are pretty good and might not be legitimate long-term plays, but they can be 1 and 2 year plays. And the reason why I always advise it is because when teams are, revamping their offensive line, like the Patriots are, it can't be all long-term plays. It can't be all 4-year deals for 26-year-olds. It can't be all draft picks. It has to be a mix of some draft picks, maybe a long-term free agent play, and a Band-Aid, so to speak. And I think Moses is the type of player that's a good 2-year Band-Aid, right? And that's usually what you're getting when you have a 3-year deal. It's, 2 years and then, see what happens. So I think it's the one offensive move that New England's made. They have a lot to do offensively, but I think that's a good starting point for them.
The NFL's best Band-Aid, Morgan Moses.
The great Morgan Moses. Yeah.
The great Morgan Moses.
He's the best Band-Aid. When he retires in 2 or 3 years, I don't know who my next guy will be. They need someone else to step up as the next. But making a lot of moves on the defensive side of the ball. Robert Spillane comes in. He has a history with Mike Vrabel, who cut him a million times in Tennessee. And Carlton Davis coming in. They're all connected to coaches in New England who have come from Tennessee and Detroit, all these players. Harold Landry as well, who we talked about briefly on one of the other shows somewhere. So Harold Landry comes in after getting released by the Titans. Robert Spillane comes in as a free agent. And then Carlton Davis, one of the bigger free agent moves, the former cornerback from the Bucks and the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Davis is the best player of those 3, and maybe the one that you would expect to make the biggest impact. It's interesting, though, they're spending this kind of money on defense when, I mean, look, it's not like the defense doesn't need help as well, but like the obvious offseason assignment for the Patriots is, hey, you look like you found a quarterback in Drake May, but there is almost literally nothing around him. How about we go get the guy some help? And the help so far has been the great Morgan Moses. And to be fair, I think that's a very good value deal, even if 3 years maybe is a bit optimistic. But like compared with the money the guys like Dan Moore or Jalen Moore are getting at left tackle, like the deal for Morgan Moses is a steal, even at his age. So I like that. But like, prioritizing defense, and maybe it's not prioritizing. I mean, they have an absolute boatload of money to spend and the money's got to go somewhere. But what looks like prioritizing defense is certainly an interesting strategy given the Drake May dynamic.
I mean, all the reports were that they were in on Chris Godwin, and reports that they even offered more money than Chris Godwin, who went back to the Bucks. Familiarity, the continuity, and the taxes in Florida versus Massachusetts. I'm sure all a part of
The
that.
weather.
So again, I think you're looking too much into that. I don't know if that's the strategy. Like, oh man, let's just take care of the defense first. I think they probably have a lot of irons in the fire, and this is just what's come through here is the defensive players. It doesn't change the needs, though. New England still has more work to do on the offensive line. They have more work to do. I mean, even just rushing the passer out. Again, Harold Landry has been a below average pass rusher per PFF historically over the last couple of years, but above average in sacking the quarterback. How do you interpret that data? I know some people would say, who cares? He has production. He gets his 10 sacks a year. And I usually say, well, that's not really production. I'd rather see a guy that's affecting the quarterback on more plays. And it's more sustainable, right? Matthew Judon was a similar player for New England whose sack totals were higher than his down-to-down production, and we just saw him drop off when he went to Atlanta in a new scheme this year. That's the risk, I think, with guys like Harold Landry. So there's still more to do up front for New England. Spillane, I think, is an interesting player. Remember, Antonio Pierce loved him with the Raiders. I think the Steelers loved him in the middle of the defense. He is that, I don't know, guy that most teams, even though he's bounced around, a lot of teams seem to like him running the middle of their defense.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. Like every team he's on, they seem to fall in love with him and start talking him up and, get massive claims and then don't keep they don't back it up. They eventually ship him on pretty quickly. So he's bouncing around all these teams, and each time they're like, this guy's, amazing leader, heart of the defense. We can build a thing around him. He can be a big contributor for us. And then, on to the next team. It's a solid move, but yeah, I'm not at this point. It's sort of fool you once, fool me 4 or 5 times. It's probably time to say, yeah, maybe he's not that good.
The one other interesting report, Mark Daniels, who covers the New England Patriots, has brought this up a few times. He says, essentially, there's a lot of fans in Gillette of Will Campbell. There's a lot of Will Campbell fans there, and Jalen Moore came off the board. A guy that's never really been a full-time starter for the Niners, making $15 million a year at left tackle. You have Dan Moore making over $20 million a year, a guy that started his career slowly gotten a little bit better, but certainly not an elite left tackle. On the ascent, yes, offensive linemen tend to get a little better by year 4 and 5. Dan Moore's in that window, but over $20 million for him going to Tennessee. The going rate for left tackle is astronomical right now. And that would actually, if you're New England at 4, it makes you more likely to go that route at left tackle because of the scarcity at the position. And even if an Abdul Carter was on the board at that point, you almost have to go left tackle, especially if they go to the draft with that need.
Well, that's where we were like a couple of weeks ago before we saw Will Campbell's measurements at the combine. It was like they're in a position right now where on paper they almost can't turn down Will Campbell at 4, the LSU offensive tackle, who then measured in at the combine, extremely short arms, like below the threshold that NFL teams want to see, and perhaps more concerningly, like basically the smallest wingspan measurement that you're going to find for an NFL offensive tackle anywhere, not just like below the threshold, but like historical outlier. Now, countering that, he worked out extremely well. He moved well. He ran an extremely fast 40. So his overall sort of relative athletic score was high 98th percentile for offensive tackles. That's the kind of athlete you want to bet on to overcome sort of short measurements. The other thing, we brought this up on our mock draft this morning on mock draft Mondays, was Dante Scarnecchia, one of the greatest offensive line coaches in NFL history, a longtime part of that Patriots dynasty in multiple stints. Dante Scarnecchia apparently has said that he would give Will Campbell a shot at offensive tackle. And that has to carry some weight within that building. I know it's a different regime and, it's not all the same people. It's not just Belichick and those things now, but like, I think there's enough institutional knowledge and history still in that building. I mean, Mike Vrabel was there during Dante Scarnecchia years. There's enough people in that building that know exactly what Scarnecchia is all about, that they have to at least, you'd be crazy not to factor that in, to at least go, hey, if Dante says he can play tackle, why are we saying he's a guard?
Quick update on some of the news that's coming through here. The Milton Williams story that he's close with the Carolina Panthers. Yeah, breaking news. Not really a breaking news update. Reports that it's not done, though, right? It was guys like Schefter coming out saying they're close. They're close to finalizing a deal. Reports out there now that the Arizona Cardinals and Minnesota Vikings are both in play for Milton Williams. So this one's going to come down to it. A lot of back and forth about, is he going to finalize things with the Panthers, or are there other teams? If Javon Kinlaw made $15 million a year as a pass rush specialist, Milton Williams as an every down type of player, I mean, he might be pushing 25 per year. Again, scarcity at the position. Osa Odigizua, $20 million a year for the Cowboys. I think Milton Williams is going to be above that. I mean, honestly, between 23 and 25 at this point, given how many teams are in on him right now.
I wonder. I mean, I don't think it really works like this necessarily because the market is the market, but like that Javon Kinlaw deal is the kind of deal that would like send me back to the negotiating table, being like, look, if this is the market, we need to start pushing the numbers up. Like our guy is so much better than Javon Kinlaw. If this is what he's getting paid, we need to start factoring in, like increasing every number on this table by a factor of 25%.
Anything else on New England and their moves right now, Sam? I mean, I think because we've talked so much about their offense and needing to build around Drake may have slept on the fact that their defense, personnel-wise, over the last couple of years hasn't been great. I think how Belichick and his sons helped elevate them maybe a couple of years ago. We didn't see that last year. They regressed into one of the worst defenses in the league. So they needed help on the defensive side of the ball, and at least adding 3 starters over the last couple of days is probably a step in the right direction, even if there's more work to do.
You hit on it earlier. It's familiarity. They're bringing in players that this coaching staff is familiar with, and that, on the one hand, that sort of feels like a crutch, but on the other hand, sometimes coaches need to do this to get what they think is the culture set. Washington did this last year, right? Dan Quinn brought in a ton of guys that he was familiar with, that he felt like these are the tone setters, these are the culture setters, these are the guys we want to transform things. And you can argue that it was wildly successful. Now, maybe by far the most important thing was they got Jaden Daniels right, and suddenly everything is different. But like that was one of the things that they addressed, and they made a ton of moves. Like they made so many changes to that roster. I think the Patriots are in a similar kind of boat where they're going to have a lot of changes. They have a huge amount of money to spend, like the most cap space in the league. So I think we're probably going to see a massive volume of moves by the Patriots. And when you make that many moves, and this was the same with Washington last year, like, well, I don't like these moves. I like these moves. These ones are okay. You have a whole spectrum, right? The Patriots, I think, are probably going to be in that boat. I like Carlton Davis. I think they've overspent for Harold Landry. Spillane is somewhere in the middle, and Morgan Moses is a pretty solid deal. Like it's the spectrum already in just the moves that they've made. But I feel like the Patriots were always likely to be one of the most active teams in free agency, and that looks like it's going to be the case.
I think it's a great point that you make there. It's going to be volume. There's so much money to spend. Also, I mean, that's the challenge with free agency is there's a reason why a lot of teams are locking up their own players. These are players that did not get locked up for whatever reason. Could have just been money issues, whatever. Maybe they wanted to hit free agency, but there's a reason why teams are doing that, because you're going to end up overpaying for a lot. But I think the volume is the right call in New England as they're trying to reshape that roster. So stick with us this entire time. If you haven't subscribed already, be sure to do that. Check the mic. We're going live whenever the big news breaks. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again with the next piece of news.